this question from Fran Galbato, and she says, is there anybody on the panel who knows anything about Meyer Lansky? Anybody know anything about Meyer Lansky? Okay. What do you know, Mr. Bach, about Meyer Lansky?
Well, we all knew that he was, according to actually the Reader's Digest was the only thing we had, where it said that he was a great criminal and that he was one of the leaders of the mafia and that he was the leader was again. He came to Israel. First of all, he came as a tourist, and then he asked to become a citizen of the state of Israel, to stay there. And now, you know, we have in Israel is law of return. What's called the law of return is a law under which every person of the Jewish faith, when he comes to Israel, he can become an Israeli citizen right away. That is his absolute legal right. But there are some exceptions. Some of them are not relevant to this. If he had committed some offenses against the Jewish people, or if he has a serious illness, I mean, all kinds of things like that. And then there's one exception, which is relevant, and that says if he is a person of a criminal past who could endanger the safety of the community of Israel, then the Minister of Interior can refuse to grant him citizenship of Israel. So when Meyer Lansky came to Israel, and when he asked for citizenship, that question, of course, arose. Well, of course, in order to say that someone has a criminal past, you have to see. And this man turned out immediately he had never been convicted of any serious crime. He was convicted about 20 years before he came to Israel. He got a 3-month sentence for gambling. So his lawyer, he said, first of all, that doesn't mean that he has a criminal past. And even if it does, this does not mean that if he 20 years ago got a 3-month sentence, that today can endanger the safety of the state of Israel, and therefore this has to be granted to him. But on the other hand, there was information that he was one of the most serious gangsters. Now, what to do about it? I was at the time with my family, we were vacationing in Switzerland, and the government decided they have to make a serious investigation of what really was behind. So I received the order to go immediately to America and to find out. And, I came to America. I spoke to our ambassador, Yitzhak Rabin, and I told him that I wanted to meet John Mitchell and to talk to him about this. And I asked for an interview, and he granted me that next day. So Rabin said, it's a waste of time. The fact is, no one asked me as the ambassador. That means that the Americans are not interested really in whether he is a citizen, not a citizen. They couldn't care less. So it's just a waste of time. I said, well, anyway, I've got this meeting with Mitchell, and I'm going to keep it. All right, so next day I came to Mitchell, and I said, that was 2 weeks before Watergate started. And I came to him and I told him that, and he said, I'm so delighted that you've come. We were so worried that you there in Israel, because this man has got millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, that because of that you don't care what sort of a person he is, whether he becomes a citizen, not becomes a citizen, just because of that, and that Israel is not interested. And therefore, we really were worried. We didn't apply to your ambassador or to your government because we didn't want to raise the suspicion that we Americans interfere in your internal decisions on questions of policy, whether you accept this person or that person. And therefore, we hesitated, and we didn't want to apply. We didn't talk to the ambassador. We didn't ask your government, and so on. But now that you have arrived, this is really wonderful. And while we were talking, he was talking to Nixon all the time. I mean, that was another thing. I mean, all the other things that were developing, that was for me rather interesting. And then, yes, well, I keep tactful about that. So anyway, he then said, all right, I'm going to give instructions that all the files, the secret files about the gangsters in the United States and the underworld, all this will be open for you. I didn't even know whether he really intended. They really opened all the things before me, all the details and sometimes secret details of investigation of what was happening in Israel. But anyway, so I spent a few weeks there, and I saw what happened, and that he did not only commit some acts of gambling, and they gave me, for instance, illegally obtained conversations which were recorded illegally by the Secret Service in America amongst gangsters. And then one of them said, the only Jew that we respect is Meyer Lansky, although what remains for us is only what he leaves after what he steals from the gambling table, and so on and so forth. And I received information that he managed to arrange the election of a certain sheriff in Broward County in Florida. And that in exchange, that sheriff, not only that he closed all the files against Lansky, but he sent the armored cars of the police to accompany the money, the cars of them with the money from one gambling place to another gambling place, so that other gangsters should not take over. You know, I mean, things like that. And then there was the famous Kefauver Committee, and where he was regarded as one of the 8 most gravest criminals in the country. Anyway, I don't want to go too much details. I learned all that, and then I came back to Israel, and I spoke to the Minister of Interior, and I persuaded him not to grant Lansky the nationality of Israel. And then Lansky applied to the Supreme Court, sitting as High Court of Justice, against the government. And I represented the government in that case. There were 5 judges. Even the minister said he thought I would lose the case, because he said, after all, the real proof there is not. And by the way, one interesting item, one of the things I presented was all the report of the Kefauver Committee report, the Senate investigation in crime of the United States. And Lansky was one of the persons summoned as a witness with his lawyer. And there he was asked, do you know Al Capone? Yes. Do you know Lucky Luciano? Yes. Did you know Genovese? Yes. All the big gangsters. And then he was asked, what business did you have with Al Capone? I refused to answer. Why? Because the answer might incriminate me. Why did you know Lucky Luciano? Yes. I refused to answer. The answer would incriminate me. So when in the courtroom, and then there were lots of witnesses who said that he was really a very dangerous gangster. So when I showed all that to the court asked, the president of the court asked me, why do you read out that about the Kefauver Committee report? Do you mean to say that because Lansky relied on the Fifth Amendment, because he didn't want to give an answer that might incriminate him, that because of that, the Minister of Interior in Israel could decide that he was a criminal? I said, no, that his right, his constitutional right under the law of the United States to plead the Fifth Amendment and not to answer. All right, then why waste our time in quoting that? I said, I don't think it's a waste of time. This is not decisive in showing that he is a criminal. But if there was other evidence, 8 or 9 witnesses who described him as one of the most serious gangsters and what he did and what he did in the various places, then every fair-minded person, especially as it's not a courthouse, it was the Senate Investigation Committee, who came to these conclusions. Everyone would ask, was this man given a chance to repudiate that? Was this man given a chance to clear himself? So the fact that he was summoned with a lawyer and that all these things were put before him that he refused to answer, that in itself doesn't show that he is a criminal, but that strengthens indirectly the case of the importance of the criminal, of the evidence which was brought, which was really against him. So finally, they decided his case was defeated, and he had to leave Israel. I was criticized then by many people in Israel. They said, this man is over 70. You now try to prove what the American police never managed to prove for 20 or 30 years. Now, why do you have to do all that? People didn't realize what it really... I felt we were getting to a crossroad. I didn't want Israel to become a place, where international or serious criminals have their home place. By the way, I want to tell you, right in the middle of the trial, I received a telegram from New Scotland Yard from England. There they had overheard a telephone conversation between two people, Rose Ziegelbaum, two people of the American underworld, one in London and one in Zurich. And they were planning to have a meeting with Meyer Lansky in Israel, to plan things. So the American police came to me, and the international police came to me, and they asked me to let these people in to cover their tracks, to see what they were planning. Now, I refused. It could have strengthened my case against Meyer Lansky, but I didn't want to put Israel on the map as a place where international crime syndicates have their international meetings. That was the only thing missing. So I used this telegram from New Scotland Yard. I put it into court. I showed them that, but I asked not to let these people in order not to have that meeting. Anyway, finally, his case in the Supreme Court was dismissed, and he had to leave Israel, and he had to go back to America. There he was put on trial. At first he was found guilty of something, and then later the main evidence was also on the part of gangsters, and he was on appeal. He was acquitted, but anyway, that had nothing to do with my arguments. But I felt that this was of increase of really importance. People in Washington told me, people of the Ministry of Justice, they told me that there were lots of people waiting, all kinds of people. They said if he could come, anyone could come to Israel. And that was really a question of principle. So the fact that we managed to prevent this man from becoming an Israeli citizen, I think this was one of the most important cases that we had in Israel.
Wow. Stand adjourned. We'll see you next year. Thank you.